Well, hello, Rick here. Another episode of More Evidence. In this case, it is more evidence that demands a verdict. This time I'll be showing some literal clips of the sightings and visual data. Let's just go ahead and dive in. The Bible, a lot of people get upset when you say that the Bible proves a lot of the astronomical things that are taking place, and there's been all this talk and just waves of talk and speculation and confirmed prophetic fulfillment, I might add, concerning the signs in the heavens, and especially, of course, the infamous one of a kind that happened last year, that is in 2017 on September 23rd. That particular sign only happens once in all of human history, and it will never happen again. The stats on it will blow your mind. So anyway, it's a big Swiss clock in the overhead there. And, the scripture says that those bodies and that whole thing up there, the way it interacts, is actually given for days and times and seasons for signs. And that's in Genesis right there. So right off the bat, it explains that. But anyway, so now what you're looking at is obviously a coronal. Well, I wouldn't say obviously. A lot of folks don't do their homework, so they don't even know what this is. Now, SDO is, a satellite, and there's different satellites out there that monitor our sun. Well, our sun, is in big trouble. You're looking at what's called coronal holes, as you see labeled there on the actual slide. And this is serious. A lot of people look at that and they think, why are there big gaping holes in the sun? I mean, what's going on? Well, and that's the point here. This is an example of one of the signs. This, of course, at Luke 21 is just one of the many references to the sun going dark, the moon going dark, the stars falling, all manner of signs in the heavens. And it says straight up here that there will be signs in the sun and in the moon and stars, and distress among the nations, perplexity, and because they'll see these, the powers of the heavens will be shaken. It goes on like that. And they're all through the Bible like this. With the advent, if you will, of these coronal holes and that many amateur astronomers out there, in Revelation 6:12 has become quite popular in the prophetic fulfillment and reference to these things. And it just comes straight up and says that the sun will become black as sackcloth of hair. And that's just referring to the kind of hair, the goat hair, black goat hair they used to make sacks in those days. Now, most folks are very familiar with the blood moons and what they've been pretty well explained again and again out with people that are in the know about the prophetic, and they're breaking it down. But people are inoculated. They don't seem to be listening. But our sun is going out, and that's part of the prophecy. In NASA and the powers that be are doing everything they can to keep people from finding out, because it'll, again, as I've said in many a video and teaching, that they don't want the banking system to go down when the public finds out. They just assume the public's going to panic and give up everything and draw all their money out of the bank, and the banking system will go down. So they're keeping the status quo. Now, here's probably the best example that I have found. This is not the SDO. This is as you can see, the GOES satellite monitoring, and the the whole surface there's no fission, there's no fusion, there's no ignition, there's no flame. And it says right there that the soft X-ray image from December of 2017, showing 100% of the solar surface facing the Earth is now covered with coronal holes. So, I mean, that pretty much speaks for itself. I don't think I need to go into it too much more. There's bunches of evidence out there, and I'll be showing some more here in a moment. Now, other than the obvious theological, prophetic concerns that I'm addressing here at its foundation and core and purpose, anyone with a half a brain is going to say, "Well, how is this happening? What's causing our sun to be drained or to atrophy?" However you want to say it. And the fact of the matter is there is an answer, and it's been in front of us all this time. But the powers that be have slowly over time convinced people to poo-hoo anything that comes down the pike that doesn't, sound like something NASA or National Geographic or one of the talking heads from their organizations has trained people to believe. That movie, The Matrix, is becoming less and less fantastious to the average researcher now. It's like, oh my gosh, how much of this stuff have they been hiding? Now, what you're looking at, an example of it is when, you've got, again, as I've said in other videos, you've got about 3 million amateur and professional astronomers out there, and they have some very sophisticated equipment available to them. So they're seeing this stuff come in. That's what you're looking at here. This is a time lapse. The amazing thing is that most of the time lapse is on actual government cameras. They can't keep up with everything that's coming in, these objects. So, when I say they can't keep up, I mean, it is, again, as I said, it's rather common knowledge in the research community now that they are, in fact, obfuscating, hiding these facts from the public. Again, to what degree it's malevolent, I don't know, but they claim it's, some claim it's benevolent. They're looking out to keep anarchy from taking place, and simultaneously, they're dropping chemtrails with unbelievable chemicals and even molds and things and nanoparticles that will block the UV from the sun, because with the coronal holes comes charged particles, sometimes at 600-700 million miles per second, or kilometers per second. If you can imagine that, our brains can't even grab that. But the point is that they are privy to this, and I'll show you an enormous amount of evidence as time allows. Now, this video clip you're seeing here is from Steve Olson over at WSO. Really one of the most cutting edge, really, I guess you'd call it a choreographer of info. He's a researcher and just does an incredible job of bringing together the data that comes in from around the world, mostly visual, from the satellites and from people that are researchers, both professional and amateur. And what he's doing here is he's showing one of the government weather cams from Italy, there in Naples, I believe, Naples. And sometimes they just can't keep up. The chemtrails and everything, they can't hide, like I was saying, all the stuff. Here you see his cursor, not the big one. That's me trying to find mine when I was recording this. Can tell I'm dragging my knuckles into the 21st century compared to him. Quite the techie, but very real and down to earth. You've got 3 objects there. He shows an even better clip of them during that video, but you can see them right there. They're illuminated. Thought I'd go ahead and run that again here. I was hoping to be able to bring his audio, and this clip actually has him narrating, but I'm not techie enough to know how to bring that volume up on a pre-recorded clip. Anyway, you couldn't hear it. So, but this gives you an idea. This is the kind of stuff that's coming in from all over the world. I mean, people everywhere are seeing this kind of thing, and it's just astonishing that the mainstream is just, it's quite frankly, it's malicious, in my opinion. It's, a sin of omission. It's there's no justification for it at all, and especially when you consider the fact that the Lord himself said that we should watch for these signs. People don't realize that a lot of the prophecies there in Matthew were from the Lord himself. He said that the sun would go dark and the moon would not give its light, the stars would fall, and these would be signs in the heavens, and there would be signs in the heavens, and so on. So, I mean, it comes from a pretty good source, don't you think? So, anyway, I wanted you to see that again. This is the kind of thing we're running into everywhere from all over the world. Now, the bulk of what I'm showing here is from WSO, is from Steve Olson, and because he does such a great job and the way he captures his stuff. But there are many other researchers that are astonishing. I mean, one of the greatest out there today is Dr. Claudia Albers, and she is a professional physicist with astronomical background, along with a great deal of other things. She's a full-on genius in my estimation. And she has captured here, in some of the telescopic photographs that she has are jaw-dropping, like this one. This is a stellar core. Think of that for a minute. That means it's a sun that went out. And it has positioned itself near our sun somehow. And this is part of what's going on. It's becoming common knowledge that these stellar cores are coming into the corona of our sun, and that is what is draining our sun. They are having plasma exchanges. If you will look closely between the metal ball here to the left top and the obvious sun, you have you have an exchange of energy between them. You can see a bit of it happening there. She explains it here in the readout, and I encourage you to stop the video here and read this so you understand what she's has postulated. Now, the plasma discharge and or plasma exchange is not an uncommon thing. It's commonly known in the scientific and astronomical community. Now this is one of her diagrams explaining in the white papers that she puts out. She puts out articles regularly. She's just a fountain of astonishing data. Let me read this. These objects seem to make magnetic connections with the sun and thus create coronal holes on the sun. They also provoke, and of course she doesn't mean in the emotional sense, but astronomical sense, provoke the sun into having CMEs and solar flares. And when they appear in the sun's corona, close to the high magnetic intensity regions, such as a sunspot group regions, the fast solar wind, which comes out of the coronal holes and the CME events affect our planet, increase induced currents inside the Earth as well as the ionosphere, and thus lead to the increased seismic and volcanic activity. These objects are therefore a threat to our planet without having to even approach it. Now, that last thing she shared about the increase in seismic and volcanic activity is why our planet is acting so crazy. We've got volcanoes going off that have been dead and dormant for millennia. And even Mount Vesuvius is starting to belch and throw a tantrum. This is really happening on an exponential level. Now, the sudden increase, and I do mean exponential, it is astonishing. All the volcanoes and seismic activity are going off all over the earth, as I just said. Just one look at one half of the Ring of Fire on our side, and that is from the Bering Sea down through and back up into Alaska and down the peninsula into all the way to South America, is just going off. It's a whole lot of shaking going on, baby. And this this is indicative of what she's talking about, and what she was referring to is the charged particles from the coronal holes cannot all be filtered, and they'll go to the core, and they're heating our core, and that's what's causing a great deal of this, and heating our core. And of course, when you heat up magma, that has to expand. Heat always expands any kind of liquid of any form. And that's why the volcanoes and seismic activity is going off. It's putting pressure on the plates and the continental crusts and faults and everything are shifting, and that's, the whole thing is heating up and expanding. So that's why we have the exponential increase. Now, the clip that you're looking at now is obviously the seismic, a recent, semi-recent seismic indicator. This is your actual Ring of Fire with fire. This is the volcanism, volcano plate boundary, and they're showing, it's the volcanoes and the plate boundaries. And what you have here is such a massive amount of new volcanic activity that it's almost impossible to describe how exponential it is. It's self-explanatory in one respect, but you have to know that it's happening, and the mainstream media will not connect the dots for you, because again, it goes against their narrative, and it goes against the globalists, and it goes against the powers that be and the status quo. And it is the Lord himself that also spoke of there being earthquakes in diverse places, and he meant a lot more by that when he gave that prophecy than we're going to talk about here. But all of this is to show where we are in his timeline. Now, all of these signs obviously line up with all the prophecies and vice versa. And now, it says there in Luke 21, as I shared earlier, many are familiar with the actual context of the scripture I shared earlier in Luke. It says there at 21, 25 through 28, that there will be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity. The sun and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, for looking after those things which are coming upon the earth. For the powers of heaven will be shaken, and then they will see the Son of Man coming with great power and glory. And when you see these things come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. Now, it's common, sense that the average unbeliever is going to scoff and mock, and I can understand that. In the scientific community, you need empirical evidence. Well, what I'm showing you, and this is the very tip of the iceberg, is actual data. Here's another example. What you're looking at here, I believe this is over Germany, could be one of the other Scandinavian countries. From the language, I don't remember where this camera is. This is one of the aviation and or weather cams. what you're looking at is moon dogs. And I laugh because there's no such thing as moon dogs. All right. And now you've heard, I'm sure if you've spent any time looking at any of this kind of stuff, in the research community, they have found that there are, and many claim, and I do mean many, to have discovered sun simulators. And like I said, the Germans have their own, the Japanese and other countries have developed them as well. And the patents are out there. You can go to the patent office even here in the United States, and those have been released online also as evidence. But anyway, so this is really happening, and the obfuscation that they're using, the way they're doing it is with a redirection of light and bending light, the laser thing. That technology's been out there for a long time, actually. And it's really simple redirection and or literal obfuscation, meaning if you approach someone in the dark of night with a flashlight in front of you, a really bright flashlight in front of you, they cannot see you at all, period. And it's that simple. The principle is, anyway. And they can redirect well, I won't go into the full details, but do a little homework on that. You'll see that it's true. Well, so if you take that technology and realize that we're looking at moon dogs and that there's something in front of the moon simulating the moon, then as crazy as that sounds, and trust me, I realize how weird that sounds, but it's just where we've come to in history and the culmination of all things. You can't have moon dogs. People for years, what NASA and everyone is always saying, anytime there's a sighting, they'll say, oh, that's just a sun dog. That's a sun dog. That's a sun flare. That's a lens flare. And they'll always say that every time. And there's no such thing as moon dogs, but that's what they're claiming. So it's hilarious. Well, and I mean that rhetorically, because it would be hilarious if it wasn't so pathetic and malicious. But you look at the original Greek word for the powers that we battle in the heavenlies, according to Ephesians 6:12, and that big Greek word I've shared before is cosmokratopos. It means the rulers of darkness of this world. And what could be darker than to hide the signs that God intended us to see, to know what time it is, from the world, from the populations? So really, if you take what I'm saying, even with a grain of salt, but you look at that and what they're claiming it is, that's a smoking gun. I mean, that right there exposes them. There's something in the way of the moon. And like I said, the prophecies are very plain, including the so-called secular prophecies. And Nostradamus, even though he was operating from a spirit of divination, from what we gather, I mean, that's not set in stone. But it appears that he was working from a spirit of divination, but we're not sure. Either way, a spirit of divination is a perverted form of the prophetic gift, so he was bringing forth prophecy. Sometimes those spirits are very accurate, and that's how they fool people, meaning in the occult, the spirit of divination, like when you go to a palm reader and that kind of stuff. That's not a benevolent spirit you're dealing with there. That's Mr. Damage or one of his minions. And so in many ways, the globalists, the elitists, are his minions. So there you go. I mean, that's a smoking gun. Those flares on each side of that round circle, those are not flares of any kind. They're reflections from behind whatever's in front. And that's just simple physics and common sense. Now, what you're looking at here is an object that got busted. Another one of the satellites, solar satellites, further back than in magnification, caught this object transversing the sun, coming across on time lapse across the face of the sun. And, and that's not the moon, folks. And so, and there's a lot of that stuff out there that's come out now. And like I said, with millions of both professional and amateur astronomers, the cat's coming out of the bag. Here we have one from WSO. Again, Steve Olson caught this one. And these orbs, both large and small, and asteroids, all are coming in mass because of the electromagnetic and gravitational pull of this, large iron wrecking ball that's come in. It goes by many names, as you probably know: Nemesis, Planet X, Planet 7X, which, by the way, go check out Gil Broussard at planet7x.net. Great data there. I don't agree with everything he says, but about 90% of it is based on, I do agree with, because it's based on physics and math and Kepler's laws of planetary motion. And, it's astonishing how analytical and redundantly authenticated and vindicated it is. So check him out. But here we have one of Steve's slides or images, and again, here we have a smaller object transversing the sun. And again, SDO, what they call SECI, a lot of the satellites out there are picking up all this stuff with different filters: ionic, photonic, electronic filters, and more. And IR too. In fact, IR meaning infrared, of course. That's how they're really seeing this thing the most. By the way, I wanted to drop back and show a picture of that, one of the sun simulators. This is Germany's rendition, their patent. For those that thought I was just making stuff up, I mean, this is common knowledge that they have sun simulators. They put them up in satellites, and over time they have put together a network to obfuscate. And many, again, in the truther, what they call truther or research community, especially astronomical, are aware of this. And to further corroborate, here is a patent from, you see the diagrams up in the top there. It's not a good rendition, not a good copy, but this is from, I can't even see it here. I think it's from 66. This is as far back as this went. Gives you an idea how long they've been working on this kind of stuff. But this is from the patent office. See, it's a claims from the claims office, and it is a patent. It's a solar simulator right there, it says. And you'll notice that it goes into the whole specs, and it's a regular patent, scientific patent. And and it pretty much speaks for itself. If you want to go into the detail, you can stop the video and read this. But I'll give you a blurb from another section from the actual patent itself. Well, this is going to be a little difficult to do here. I'm going to try and read this. The print is small, and my mic is not set up in the same vicinity that I need to be to do it. I'll try it. The highlighted section says, radiation emanating from the solar simulator must be substantially the same as that of sunlight before it is filtered through any appreciable amount of atmospheric air. Further, since the sun's rays reaching the vicinity of the Earth are substantially parallel, the solar simulator must also emit almost parallel rays. It goes on to talk about the radiation intensity and the like. There at the bottom, highlighted, it talks about Google patents and how they've approached putting in a claim, and talks about it mentions the Japanese, and I guess the South Koreans also have their sun simulating sun simulator patent as well. So this is real. As fantastious as it sounds, this is really happening. It's been happening for decades, as far as when they started researching, and then they put one up. I don't know if you've noticed the massive increase of launches of rockets of late. But all the nations are putting up satellites of all different kinds, and for different reasons, I'm sure, because they can see war is approaching at the same time that all this is approaching as well. Now, here, I want to come back to where I was before I wanted to drop back and show you the sun simulator stuff, because it's just not fair to put out that kind of information and not give some evidence, scientific evidence. This is really going on. Anyway, coming back to what's coming with these objects that have come in. Recently, as many know now, the universe has been discovered as electromagnetic as the dominant drawing force, as opposed to gravity as we thought for most of the modern age. Gravity is not to negate gravity, it's just the weaker of the two, and that's become common knowledge now, and it's why our world is acting crazy, because the electromagnetic influences of both these objects that have come in, and well, combined with the solar flares, it's causing the jet stream to go crazy, and we've broken all the records in all the countries in all categories around the world. In the weather and so on. It's just nuts. This is why. And this chart, this article from this site, The Watchers, is really informative. It's a great site, a great place to go check it out. But there's you see on the left there I keep using the word exponential. And this is why you see the exponential increase in fireballs. Now, fireballs can cover anything from, of course, asteroids to meteors, meteorites that actually penetrate. So, recently we had that one in Michigan where it actually struck, and they played that down too, but it showed up on the seismograph, so they couldn't flat out lie about it, like or do that sin of omission and leave it out. It hit the deck, and everybody knew. Anyway, look at that increase from 2007 to 2017, and that is absolutely, multiplied exponentially. So, anyway, you see that we had one come by us on the 18th of January that missed us by 0.10 LD. That's like getting a shave. By astronomical standards. And they didn't know it was there, and it went till it went by us, and that's happening very, very often now. Every week we have close calls, nearly every week. So what happened is all of the electromagnetic draw of this big metal wrecking ball, call it whatever you want, Planet 9, Nemesis, Nibiru. It's like a giant magnet. The reason that thing has so many names is it keeps, coming back around. And Gil Broussard discovered that the orbit of this thing is more in the hundreds of years rather than the thousands. And people have trouble with that because there's been so few sightings. But what it is it doesn't come in close every time. And on the times that it has come in close, this is the kind of stuff that happens on the Earth. So we're starting to see the front edge of that happening. What you're looking at here is that draw. It's a giant magnet, really. And it's drawing in those arrows on this graphic. This slide is those arrows are actually comets. Among, the other debris that's out there, and I don't just mean space junk, but I mean, the Kuiper Belt itself is very busy. And so these arrows are comets being drawn in by the massive electromagnetic draw of these stellar cores that have come in. This group of planets, some call it a group of planets, and it may well be, and I'm sure some of it is. But the point, of course, is that the prophecies are all of these events, all of these things, all of these objects and signs in the heavens are part of the prophecies, and that's why the Lord Himself said that we should be watching diligently for these things. Actually, Revelation talks about the asteroids and the like. It says in Revelations 8:7-12, the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast to the earth, and a third part of the trees were burned up, and a third of the green grass was burned up, and the second angel sounded, and there was like a great mountain burning with fire cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood, and a third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and a third part of the ships, rather. It's very small print here, bear with me. A third of the ships were destroyed, and the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and a third part of the fountains of waters, and the name of the star was Wormwood. And a third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. And then the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and a third part of the moon, and a third part of the stars, so as a third part of them was darkened. And the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. Now, something that I have shared before in a video on this subject, this particular subject. If you notice, it says that there followed hail and fire mingled with blood. Well, throughout Scripture there are references to fiery hail and how waters and such were turned to blood. Well, the blood really in this case is speaking of the red, which is really iron oxide, which they have discovered accompanies this big wrecking ball and its entourage. It's just iron, and it has like a 2 million mile long debris trail that it's dragging like a magnet. Now, within that debris trail is everything, objects the size of planets, to moons, to asteroids, to meteors, and so on. It's a giant magnet. It just picks up stuff everywhere it goes. Now, many people heard about Russia and the giant meteor that broke through and did so much damage there in Russia. And then recently, well, there's been many all over the place, Mexico included, and this one, of course, we heard about, and I mentioned earlier, in Michigan there. It registered as a 2.0 seismic event. And, when that meteor hit the ground there, people all around the communities there came out, to see what had happened. They knew something had hit. They didn't know the extent of it. And here's a picture somebody took saying that that's where it hit. It actually hit in a neighborhood, took out took out an outbuilding of some kind of garage or something like that. And that may have only been a piece of it, because when it entered, it was pretty heavy. And I think it broke up, and that might have been a piece of it. But this is increasing worldwide. And again, I mean to use the word exponentially. Now, so anyway, here's an NEO chart. NEO means Near Earth Object. We're getting reports from all over the world. Fireballs are increasing along with all the other happenings on the earth that are so amazing that most of them are unprecedented, both in their scale and frequency. So, and this chart, it gives you an idea. I mean, some of this stuff is coming in so close. I mean, it's amazing. It's never happened, and it's happening frequently now, and they're not telling the public, and a lot of times they don't see them till they went by. Now, I've gone long here and tried to keep it as focused as I can. Scientific stuff can make your eyes glass over for most of us. But, the bottom line is this is really heavy data that's coming in. This is coming in all over the world. I have no motive or agenda. I'm not in it for the money. I'm not even monetized. This is to bring people up to speed, because a lot of the guys that are doing the main research out there are so busy and have done it for so long that it's hard for them to go back and try to make people understand what they're talking about. People who tune in this late are going, what? This is like bunk, and they don't have any reference point. They have no background to see the evidence. So they just think it's fantastious, and it's sad because, a lot of these researchers are, they're sacrificing professional gain and finances. And I mean, they've, been, blacklisted, and they're doing this for the average person because they care about people. They want people to get a heads up, and mainly to get spiritually prepared. And you say, well, how do I do that? Well, the Bible. Most people in the West, they play dumb, but they know the gospel. They know Jesus came as the final sacrifice, and all you have to do is talk to him, ask him into your life, and it's not complicated because God's smart enough, you think, to know that we're not going to pay attention if it's complicated. It's just the way we are. Sad. So, in Genesis I referred to earlier, it says, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament, that means the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and years. And, and you look at the Hebrew calendar and the original amount of days on the calendar, and you can backtrack the way you would even in astronomy. By the way, none of this is based on astrology. Again, astrology is a perversion of astronomy that started as far back as Nimrod. I mean, antediluvian period. That was where that originated. It's the occult. So, but anyway, so you can backtrack using the proper calendar and the stellar orbiting and planetary orbits, what we now call Kepler's laws, and come up with some amazing results in your research that shows the biblical accounts actually are history and actually did happen, and in many cases is corroborated by secular historical data as well. The reason the biblical accounts are so well documented and went from oral tradition, written tradition, and carried over so purely that's a study all in itself. It's a miracle, really. But, it says right there that these things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings to us upon whom the fulfillment of the ages have come. That's in the New Testament. And really, Paul's just saying, they're letting us know that those accounts are to give us a heads up, know what to look for and how to get ready. So bottom line is Jesus is crazy about you, and he's done everything that he can do. You are engraved in the palms of his hands. He's done all that he can do to let you know that there is amnesty, that he does love you, and that he is coming back, and there's an accountability involved here. He wants you to be, to know him and hang out with him. He's that crazy about you, and all of the signs in the heavens. The reason you're here on the earth is to find him and to know about him. And I'm a recording artist by trade. That's what you're looking at here. It's a cover of one of my singles, more recent singles. And my site is ricknorrismusic.net. And if you like blues and gospel, rock and roll, where it meets, Motown, and I mix it up pretty good. In fact, my last album was so eclectic. I had everything from dobro, blues on the porch, to string and vocal arrangements. So I even brought in some African Kenyan African choirs on a couple of cuts. It was just really a fun project. Anyway, talking shop here. Now, he's just crazy about you. He just wants you. And people say, well, what does he want with me anyway? Well, he just wants you. He just wants to hang out with you. And that's really what Pentecost was all about. It's like his spirit, when he was resurrected, he was a spirit from then on, and he being God, he can go back and forth. But the point is, he's here. I mean, this is real. And you personally are a spirit. You live in a body, and you have a soul, but you are a spirit. And, this is a pretty short stint here on the planet if you stop and think about it. Anyway, so, go on over to my site, which, again, ricknorrismusic.net, and I have music there. I have the site opened up. You can listen to all of the songs all the way through. You don't have to buy anything. I don't like charging for anything spiritual, and there's secular material there, too. I mean, I've been in the recording industry for, like I said, over 50 years, done everything from the White House to the ghetto. You can go down to the About section and check out my bio if you care about such vain things. Anyway, so here I go. More to come, and more evidence. I mean, there's just tons of evidence of all of this that God's up to. He loves you, and God bless you, and we'll talk to you later.